Let's start creating our project. I'm going to create a new folder and start my code editor. First thing, we need our package.json, and we can initialize one with npm init. I'm going to leave everything as default. Next, we need to install our dependencies. So I'm going to do npmi -- save dev. And we need a couple of things. We need Typescript. We need jest for unit testing. We need types for jest / jest. We need browser sync. We need the rimref for deleting files and directories, and we need npm run all. So when this is done, we can start creating our folder structure. So I'm going to create public folder. This is where we're going to serve our assets from, and another folder called src/ts. I'm going to create a new test file, app.ts. And at that point, we're almost ready to compile our TypeScript files. We need TypeScript configuration file, and we can initialize one with command npx tsc -- init. This should output our default tsconfig file, like so. I'm going to replace this with my own configuration, like so. Let's just have a quick overview of my configuration. So I'm targeting ES Next, meaning I want to support the latest available features in the browser. Module, we are going to use ES6 modules, so we don't have to do any module bundling. Our output directory is public.js, so our compile JavaScript file is going to live in public/js. That's from where we are going to be serving from. I'm setting a directory for my sources, which is source.ts. I define the place where TypeScript is going to look for types. We don't have any custom types. If we had, we could specify another location, but in that case, node modules types, this is going to be sufficient. I am excluding some directories, so the files within these directories won't be compiled, so node modules, of course, and we are going to have a tests folder, which I don't want to compile either. And finally, we've got our watch options. This is just a standard configuration that can be found on TypeScript documentation page. What this will allow me to do, it will allow me to start a TypeScript compiler in watch mode. So if I'm going to run npx tsc -- watch, this should start watcher, and anytime I'm going to change something in my TypeScript files, they're going to be compiled on the fly. So if I do this, we can see the file is already compiled. Now we have ability to compile our TypeScript files and watch them. We need to be able to serve our project in the browser, and we need some sort of HTTP server. We can start one by using browser sync. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a script in our package.json. I'm going to remove the test script and create one called browser sync, like so. We install browser sync locally, so we can start it from terminal by running npx browser sync start. We want to start server, like so, and we're going to be serving from our public folder. I'm going to pass a port, which in my case is going to be 5000, and we need to tell browser sync which files to watch in order to reload the browser. So we're going to pass another flag called files, and I'm going to say watch public folder. So if anything changes in our public folder, reload the browser for me. And if we try to run this, npm run browser sync, we should get our browser started. Now there is a small issue. We don't have our HTML file, so I'm going to create my index.html file so we can display something in the browser. We're going to move this to public directory like so, and populate this file with some default boilerplate. I'm going to adjust the title called ts app. Next, we can add h1 tag saying hello world. And we also need to include our script. And it's going to be src equals js app.js. If we reload our browser, we should see hello world, and if we check the console, we should see our console log, and it looks like our source maps are working correctly. So yes, this is looking good. Now we want to be able to run our TypeScript watcher and browser sync in parallel, and we can do that by creating another npm script. So I'm going to add another one called watch, and in here we're going to execute TypeScript watcher with npx tsc --watch. This will start watcher for us, and then we can create another task called dev like so, and we're going to use npm run all. So we're going to say run in parallel, and we're going to say watch and browser sync like so. So now if we try to run the script, npm run dev, we should have both tasks running in parallel. And if we test that, let's go to the console. We see our console log. If I go and change my file like so, let's copy this console.log again, and I save that, we'll see file is compiled and browser is reloaded. As I mentioned before, we're going to be using ES6 modules, so let's quickly test that. So I'm just going to create a new file called foo.ts, and inside I'm going to export default class foo, and within constructor I'm going to say console log something out for me. So console.log, let's say this is foo. Right. If we try to include this file in our main app file, import foo from foo.js, and if you try to instantiate this class new foo, we should get an error in our browser. So you can see cannot use import statements outside a module. And very quick way to resolve that is mark our script as a type module. If we do this, reload, everything should work as expected. Now, before we move any further, I would like to finish my scripts tasks in package.json. So I would like to have another one called build. So let's call it build. But in order to execute this script, I need another one. So I'm gonna create another one called compile, which will run npx tsc. So we get TypeScript compilation just once. And then we want to clean our dist folder. So I'm going to use rimraf, npx rimraf, and we're gonna delete all the files in our public directory JS folder, and we're gonna delete everything in there. So with this, we should be able to run these two scripts synchronously, like so. So I'm gonna say clean and compile. And if I try to run this, npm run build, we should delete all the JavaScript files first, and then TypeScript compiler should recompile them and put them back in our dist folder. This is working fine. I don't want to have source maps being included when I run my build script. So there is a way to go about it. We can have a different tsconfig configuration and pass them to different scripts. So in this case, what we can do, we can rename our default tsconfig and call it something like dev. And we're going to create another one called tsconfig.prod.js. .json, like so. I'm just going to copy and paste all the configuration, and only change I'm going to make is to remove the source maps, like so. Now, we've got two different configuration files. So what we can do, we can tell TypeScript compiler which one to use. So if we're using the watch script, what we can say, use different file, and we do that with project, and we can pass ts config.dev.json, and if we're going to run our build script, we can pass a different configuration file. So in this case, it's going to be our prod. Now, if I try to run npm run build, we should see our JavaScript being compiled, but source maps not included. And we've got an error. I forgot project. So if we run this, here we go. So as we can see, our dist folder only includes JavaScript without source maps. But if we run npm run dev, we should get JavaScript files along with all the source maps. Let's have a quick look at unit testing. So I included jest, and I can execute it with npx jest, like so. And this is not going to work because we don't have any tests. But what we can see is that jest is looking for this specific folder with the tests. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new directory here with the name that jest is looking for. And I'm going to create a new test inside test.test.ts. And let's create very first test with test. We're going to say this is test. We're going to supply our closure here. And I'm going to say const a equals true. And I expect a to equal true. If we run this now, we should have our test executed. But if we are going to fail that, we should get our test failure, a nice error message. Now, just to clean this up, let's add additional script in our package.json. So let's flip this back. And we're going to create a final task called test. And we can run our tests with npx jest. And if we run npm run test, we should have our tests executed. As a final thing, I would like to make sure that all my TypeScript files are formatted in the same fashion. And I can achieve that with editor config extension. So I'm going to create editor config file, like so, and I'm going to paste a very simple configuration. And what I'm doing here, I'm targeting TypeScript files, JSON files, and JavaScript files. And I set the character encoding. I want to make sure that all trailing white spaces are removed. I want to insert new final line, and I want to enforce indentation to be 4 spaces. So now if I save that and go to my file, and I do something silly like this and save it, we can see that all the white spaces from the end of the line are removed and new final line is included. In order for this to work, you need to have editor config extension installed. This extension is available for pretty much every code editor and IDE. I'm going to include a link with more information about editor config in the description. And this is it. This is my very simple TypeScript configuration for writing JavaScript in the browser. If you like the video, if you think it helped you in any way, please make sure to like or even subscribe. I will include the link to GitHub repository in the description. Thank you for watching.